Above the clouds where sunlight turns to mist and radar grows blind, a lone F-14 roared through the sky. It wasn't scheduled. No one had cleared it for launch, and yet there it was, cutting a shadow across the blue like a ghost drawn in steel. 5 jets flew ahead, unaware of the threat closing in on them. An enemy aircraft, sleek and silent, tracked their formation from above its missile systems already primed. Inside the rogue F-14, no one spoke. There were no commands, no chatter, only the whir of targeting systems, and a rising tone in the pilot's headset that meant one thing: lock. The enemy fired first. A long white streak carved the air. One of the trailing pilots saw it too late, veering hard and flaring a second away from destruction. But then a flash. The missile veered off course. A Sidewinder missile had struck first, straight from the belly of the unauthorized jet. The enemy craft exploded in midair, scattering into ash and debris. The American jets broke formation in panic, trying to make sense of what just happened. One voice finally crackled across the frequency, confused but steady, reporting the hostile down. Another voice followed. Calm, controlled, not part of the squadron's manifest. This is Ghost 6. Mirage confirmed. You're clear. No one had seen where it came from. No one had noticed it launch. They only heard that name. Ghost 6 wasn't part of any roster. No one had flown under that call sign before. And yet, here it was. Real. Fast. Untraceable. The deck logs would show no record of takeoff. The jet wasn't supposed to be operational. The codes shouldn't have worked. But someone had known what to do. On board, the carrier alarms lit up only after the dust had settled. By the time anyone realized a fighter was missing, the battle had ended. A kill had been made. A squad had been saved. In the days that followed, flight analysts would dissect the footage. Radar tapes would show one blip rising beneath the formation and disappearing seconds later right before the kill. The comms log would list a single transmission from an unidentified pilot. Ghost 6. Whoever it was hadn't waited for permission. They had seen something no one else had, and they acted when it mattered most. No medals, no names. Just a jet that flew when no one asked it to, a rogue pilot who never sought credit, and a mystery that started the day 5 men returned home without knowing who had saved them. Section 1. Main character. Introduction. Lieutenant Kara Davis, the pilot. No one trusted. Kara Davis didn't fit the mold. She was quiet, observant, and the kind of pilot who spent more time studying flight patterns than grabbing drinks in the mess. At 29, she was one of the youngest on the carrier and one of only 3 women in her entire wing. Most days she kept her hair in a tight bun, not out of regulation, but because it got in her way. Her flight suit always looked slightly faded, her boots worn from hours pacing the deck between drills. She didn't laugh much, not because she was cold, but because she was always listening. She'd grown up near a small airfield in New Mexico where her father worked ground crew and her mother taught high school math. Kara watched planes take off before she learned to ride a bike. She didn't talk about that much. But if you asked her about wind shear or cold start protocols, her eyes lit up like sunrise. Her simulator hours were double that of her squadron peers. She logged mission briefs like they were personal diaries. Her locker was stacked with annotated flight maps, hand-drawn overlays, and recon logs she marked herself after hours. Still, that wasn't what people saw. They saw the young woman who didn't talk back, the one who didn't push for attention. They saw her as eager, maybe too eager, and when she raised a concern or flagged a pattern, it often went ignored. Not maliciously, just quietly dismissed. She remembered one flight commander calling her instincts dangerous. Too intuitive, he said, too unpredictable for tight formations. So they benched her. Kara didn't argue. She never did. She just sat on the edge of the tarmac and watched. She paid attention to radar scans others scrolled past. She made mental notes of formation breaks and reaction delays. While others debriefed, she reviewed the footage twice, then once more before lights out. There was no chip on her shoulder. No need to prove herself. She just believed that seeing what others missed might one day matter, and if it didn't, she'd still be ready. She found peace in the cockpit. Not in the noise of flight, but in the silence before it. Her hands moved like memory over the controls. Every switch, every dial was a language she understood better than most people around her. She didn't need approval to know she was good. But it still stung when her name never appeared on flight rosters, especially when she knew she could help, when she saw things no one else did, and still no one asked. Some nights she stayed in the hangar long after the others had gone, not because she had to, but because the hum of machines, the scent of jet fuel, and the glint of steel under low lights felt more like home than anywhere else. She didn't want the spotlight. She didn't crave medals or attention, but deep down she held on to a quiet hope that one day when it really counted, someone would finally see what she'd been seeing all along. Section 2. Setting the environment. An institution that didn't see her. Life aboard the carrier followed rules so tight they felt sewn into the steel. Every action had a protocol, every protocol had a ranking officer, and every ranking officer had someone they reported to. The chain of command didn't bend for instinct, and it certainly didn't break for quiet voices. Kara moved through that world like a shadow. Not invisible, just not loud enough to force recognition. The deck crew saw her as competent. Pilots saw her as young. Command saw her as potential, but not quite priority. Uniforms were pressed. Orders were clear. People were expected to speak only when spoken to and act only when told. The culture rewarded conformity and punished risk in ways no one had to say aloud. You either followed the flow or found yourself quietly sidelined. Kara watched it happen to others, but she lived it in small daily cuts. Her ideas were called untested. Her warnings were labeled premature. Her success in the simulator was chalked up to good programming. When she outperformed others, they said she was lucky. When she noticed things others missed, they said she was guessing. The truth was, Kara had studied patterns until she could see them before they formed. She had predicted a tailspin 2 drills before it happened. She spotted radar inconsistencies that later turned into confirmed threats. But the system didn't reward foresight unless it came with stripes on your sleeve, or decades behind your name. Her last mission ended in silence. She'd called out an anomaly on Radar 1 that didn't match expected interference. She flagged it twice. Her CO overruled her. They lost a jet minutes later, and still the review said nothing about her report. Just an unfortunate incident. No mention of what she'd tried to prevent. After that, she was grounded. Officially, it was called a precaution. Unofficially, it meant they didn't trust her judgment anymore. Too instinctive, too independent, too much of a wild card in a system built to eliminate variables. That word stuck with her. Variable. As if being human made her dangerous. As if seeing patterns others didn't meant she should sit back and stay quiet. And so she did. She watched briefings from the back. Her name vanished from the rotation board. Her flight helmet gathered dust beside the bench where she used to sit ready. Still, she didn't lash out. She didn't argue. She wrote her own reports, ran her own simulations, and studied every inch of recon data like someone would eventually listen. She traced lines between anomalies that others ignored. She layered new maps over old ones. What she saw didn't scare her. What scared her was how easily everyone else dismissed it. On that ship, silence didn't mean peace. It meant being sidelined. Her silence became armor, and the hangar became her refuge. The deck buzzed with orders and engine tests, but she found clarity in the background noise. The machines didn't judge her. The numbers made sense. The patterns didn't lie. She didn't resent her team. Not really. But she saw the game. She saw how others were rewarded for playing it safe, for saying what leaders wanted to hear. She knew that in a place built to move like clockwork, the people who noticed cracks were often labeled as disruptions. There was no room for instinct, no time for a gut feeling. Everything had to be verified, triple-checked, cleared through layers of authority. But threats didn't always give you time for a chain of command. Sometimes all you had was a second, a reading, a hunch. And if you were wrong, you got grounded. If you were right but still didn't have clearance, you got ignored. Kara wasn't bitter. She was just aware. Aware that the system was designed to catch mistakes after they happened, not prevent them. Aware that value in that world was measured by rank, not insight. And still, she chose to stay ready. She never believed someone would give her a moment, so she prepared for the one she'd have to take. Alone. No authorization, no backup. Just her instincts and the hope that when it all came down, she'd be exactly where she needed to be. Section 3. Conflict and Turning Point. Grounded, ignored, and still watching. Kara stood on the edge of the flight deck just outside the ready room watching as the mission briefing ended without her name on the manifest. Again. The others filed past, not unkind, but indifferent, each of them focused on gear checks and flight patterns. No one noticed she hadn't been called. She had submitted her recon notes 3 nights in a row. She marked the inconsistencies in thermal imaging, the ghost pings near the northern pass. She flagged them all, knowing what they meant. It was the same pattern as last time, the same one no one believed until it was too late. Her helmet sat untouched on the bench, almost like a joke. The briefing room buzzed with casual energy pilots tossing jabs and trading caffeine packs like it was just another run. Kara stayed back. One hand rested on the cold metal of the F-14 she wasn't allowed to fly. The jet didn't speak, but somehow it felt more loyal than the officers around her. She waited until they were gone, not because she was hesitant, because she needed quiet, focus. Once the deck cleared, she walked, steady, direct, not toward her quarters but toward the lower level, past the maintenance zone, past the restricted sign, down a hallway she knew better than most. At the end sat Bay 3, locked, unused. It held a stripped-down bird marked for test flights, officially not operational, technically off-limits. She keyed in a code. It worked. The light flipped green and the doors pulled open with a slow metallic groan. Inside was a second F-14, older, rough around the edges, still armed, still flight-capable, already fueled probably from a canceled test run that never made it to the log. She stood for a second just breathing, feeling the stillness, the weight of what she was about to do. Then she climbed in. Every motion was muscle memory. Harness clipped, switches flipped, engine startup bypassed. She didn't have time for ceremony. She needed air under her wings. Her pulse was steady, her focus razor sharp. Above her, the main deck buzzed with the scheduled launch. 5 jets rolled into formation. She recognized the tail number of the lead plane. Harwood, the one who pushed her aside, the one who said instincts didn't belong in war. She saw the flaw in their path. Again, the radar wash was back, the ghost spike. A Mirage jet was already in play. She was sure of it. There was no time for more reports, no one left to convince. She flipped off the transponder, silenced her ID, hit the throttle and aligned with the auxiliary catapult rail. The clamps locked with a sound that felt like a verdict. One push. That was all it took. She didn't pause. She didn't whisper a prayer. She simply launched. The jet screamed forward, pulled by brute force through a rail never meant for combat. It cleared the doors, cut through the horizon, and vanished into the sky like it had always belonged there. No call sign, no clearance, just Kara, flying, finally. Section 4. Climactic action. Ghost. 6. Enters the sky. Kara climbed fast, breaking through the lower clouds with her eyes locked on the radar screen. The patterns were clear now. A fast-moving contact, no ID signature diving from high altitude on an intercept vector. Her heart didn't race. Her breath didn't catch. This wasn't fear. It was focus. Below, the squadron maintained their formation, unaware they were being hunted. The Mirage came in clean, almost surgically, sliding through a blind spot in their sensor coverage. Kara angled wide beneath them, staying in their shadow. No one had seen her launch. No one knew she was up. She toggled her systems to listen only. The squadron chatter was casual. No tension, no warning. They had no idea. She kept rising, smooth and steady, hands gliding over controls like a pianist mid-performance. Everything was happening just as she predicted. The Mirage locked onto the rear jet. Her screen blinked. Its speed didn't match standard approach. It was too cold, too sharp. She'd studied these moves in theory. Now they were real. She armed her sidewinder and nudged the throttle forward. The Mirage shifted. Launch. A missile flared from beneath its wing. The trailing pilot finally saw it breaking left and firing countermeasures. But the dodge came too late. The missile was too close. Kara didn't wait. She fired. Her sidewinder shot forward like a blade. Time slowed for a breath. The sky lit up with flame. The Mirage tried to turn, but the missile struck clean. One burst, then vapor. The Mirage was gone. She dropped altitude, fast diving just beneath the cloud line, riding the edge of the formation. Still unseen, still silent. The squadron frequency lit up with confusion. Someone shouted about a hostile. Another confirmed an unknown contact was down. Then a moment of stunned quiet. She switched her mic on just long enough. "This is Ghost 6, Mirage confirmed. You're clear." Her voice didn't shake. She didn't say more. She banked left into a wide arc, staying low. The squad leader's voice came next, cold and sharp, demanding to know who gave clearance. She didn't answer. That wasn't why she was there. She flew alongside the squadron just outside their visual range. Her systems were still green, fuel low but manageable, weapons empty but mission complete. She didn't crave recognition. She didn't wait for praise. She only stayed close in case they needed her again. By the time the carrier realized she was gone, the skies were already safe. And Kara Davis, the pilot who wasn't supposed to be flying, had just saved 5 men from dying in the same silence where they once dismissed her. Section 5. Recognition and Reversal. Recognition came with silence. The carrier deck was quieter than usual when Kara returned. The flight crew scrambled to make room, surprised by the emergency landing alert from a jet no one had cleared for flight. Her wheels touched down smooth and steady, the kind of landing that didn't need applause. She shut down the systems in silence. The cockpit hissed as it opened, releasing heat and the lingering hum of adrenaline. She climbed out without waiting for the ladder and dropped to the tarmac with her helmet in one hand. A group of officers stood at attention, but no one spoke. They watched her pass, unsure whether to salute, scold, or stare. Kara didn't look left or right. She walked straight toward the debrief chamber, her boots sharp against the deck. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted. The pilots she'd saved were already seated. Their faces were pale, their posture different. Harwood sat near the end of the row, his eyes locked on the floor. At the front of the room stood Captain Ramsey, holding a single file in his hand. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he turned on the screen behind him. Radar footage played on loop, a hostile blip, a missile, a sudden intercept, then an explosion that tore through cloud cover and cleared the threat. He paused the screen on the moment of impact. Every eye turned to Kara. She remained still. The captain opened the file and held up a printed report. It was her analysis, the one she submitted 3 days ago. It had been flagged by Intel but never reviewed. Projected flight path, signal interference, mirage behavior, all of it matched what just happened. The captain looked at Harwood and asked if he had seen this report. Harwood opened his mouth, then closed it. He hadn't. He trusted the system. He never thought she could be right. No one said a word. The captain turned to Kara. He listed the facts calmly. She launched without clearance. She bypassed protocol. She took a grounded jet into active airspace, and in doing so, she saved 5 lives. He set the file down and nodded once. Her grounding was lifted. Effective immediately, her record cleared, and she was reassigned to lead recon for the rest of the rotation. Still, Kara didn't speak. She gave a simple nod and turned to leave. Behind her, the room remained silent, not because no one had anything to say, but because there was nothing left to prove. She walked out the same way she walked in, head high, heart quiet, letting her actions echo louder than anything words could carry. Kara sat alone in the hangar, the quiet hum of cooling engines settling around her like a familiar blanket. She was wiping down a panel beneath the nose of her jet when the encrypted message came through her tablet. No one else saw it. No one else was meant to. It was from a name she hadn't heard since her earliest training days. General Marcus Reeve. Retired. Former commander of a unit so classified most believed it had been shut down years ago. His words were brief. He'd seen her flight, her decision, her silence. He said they were building something new, quiet, off the books, and they needed eyes that could see what data couldn't. She didn't respond. Not right away. She just stared at the message, the soft blue glow reflecting off the steel around her. Then she stood, calm and deliberate. She walked to her quarters and began to pack. There was no announcement, no farewell. She moved like she always had, unnoticed by most. She folded her flight suit, placed her helmet in the case, and left nothing behind except one thing. On her desk, she left her old flight log open to a fresh page, a single note written in the margin. "You don't need permission to be ready." The next morning, her bunk was empty, her gear gone, her name removed from the flight roster without explanation. No one in the command room knew where she'd gone, not even Captain Ramsey. Some said she'd been reassigned. Others whispered about black sites in the desert experimental unit's ghost squadrons, but no one could confirm anything. All they knew was that she left without asking and disappeared like she'd never been grounded in the first place. And she didn't look back, because Kara never needed to be seen to know where she belonged. The squadron wasn't the same after she left. Something had shifted quietly but deeply, like a current changing under the surface. People spoke softer during debriefs. They listened longer. They asked twice when someone flagged a concern. Radar protocols were updated. Anomalies that used to be brushed aside were now reviewed by 2 officers instead of 1. Ghost pings weren't ignored anymore. They were studied, mapped, and remembered. Kara's final recon notes were turned into training slides. Her intercept flight path became part of simulation drills. No one said her name out loud, not often, but everyone knew who started it. New pilots were told to trust their instincts. Flight techs double-checked calibrations. Officers read reports twice, even the ones submitted late at night. The unspoken rule was simple. Don't dismiss quiet just because it's quiet. The maintenance crew kept her old bird in top condition even though no one flew it. Some said it was for testing. Others said it was reserved. But everyone knew the truth. That jet belonged to someone who proved you didn't need stripes to be sharp. You just needed to see what others missed. In the mess hall where she used to eat alone, there was now always a spot left open. No sign marked it. No one claimed it. It just stayed that way. A small gesture that said more than any speech. The younger pilot started calling her the Silent One. Not out of mystery, but out of respect. Her flight footage was passed between training classes. Her intercept called a masterpiece of timing. It wasn't just skill. It was presence. A sense of knowing when to act even without permission. One day a new recruit asked where she'd gone. The room stayed quiet for a beat. Then a senior pilot said she flew where only ghosts go, and no one corrected him. Because legends don't always speak. Sometimes they just leave behind a trail no one forgets. And for those who followed Kara Davis, the message was clear. Strength isn't always loud. Courage isn't always visible. But once it's shown, it changes everything.